People with long COVID suffer from lung damage, which may not be detected by routine tests, according to researchers. A study has shown gas transfer from the lungs to the bloodstream is significantly impaired in patients. Joining us now, the study's chief investigator, Professor Fergus Gleeson, along with Dr. Emily Fraiser, a respiratory consultant who leads the Oxford Post-COVID Assessment Clinic. Lovely to have you both on the programme. And Professor, to you first, just explain exactly what we are discovering about long COVID. What is the extent of our knowledge of this condition?
So, from my point of view, when we scan them and do x-rays, they all appear normal. So what we've done here is get patients to breathe in xenon, which is an inert gas, behaves like oxygen, goes through the lungs into the bloodstream, and we can watch that happen and see how well it's happening. And in these patients, we've discovered that it doesn't seem to work as well in some of them as it should do.
And Professor, just to follow up on that, when we say that the gas transfer isn't happening at the rate that we assume that it should, just explain just for the layman exactly what we mean by that. Is it simply shortness of breath?
So you'd have to talk to Emily. She's the chest physician who sees the patients in clinic about the shortness of breath. I'm talking about the function of the lungs. And there seems to be impairment in some of the patients with long COVID in how their lungs are functioning.
Well, go on then, Doctor. You can explain that one to me then, surely.
We don't know at the moment. We know that a lot of patients with long COVID experience breathlessness. We know that breathlessness is a really complicated symptom, and there are many different factors that lead to somebody feeling breathless. What our question is whether or not the abnormalities that we're detecting in this early study could potentially be, contributing, reasons for breathlessness. And the only way we're really going to know that is by doing a much, much larger study. But I think these findings are really interesting.
Professor Wild, just tell us then just a little bit more about why the use of Xenon. How did that work with the MRI? And do we know exactly roughly where the abnormality, if it is an abnormality, may lie?
Sure, great question. So, well, we know that patients that had been in hospital with COVID that were discharged, that had normal CT scans, their lungs seemed to be impaired using Xenon when we looked at it. And so we've done. Sorry, you were going to say?
I said nothing. You carry on, Professor.
I apologise. So we've discovered that when they breathe in, the lungs, in terms of ventilation, i.e. breathing in the oxygen or air, is normal, but it doesn't seem to cross into the bloodstream. So we now know that the problem in some of the patients seems to be just at the bit where the gas, the xenon or oxygen, crosses into the lungs. And now we've got to work out exactly where in those microstructures that the problem is. But it's down there. It's down actually where the gas crosses from the lungs into the bloodstream.
Dr. Fraiser, what then are the implications of this research? Clearly, there are hundreds of thousands, millions of people potentially around the world who are all suffering from what now is a collectively termed long COVID. We are seeking and we are trialling new treatments and rehabilitation methods, but what will this particular piece of research lead to, do you think?
Well, I think first of all, we need to do is establish a causal relationship between the abnormalities that we're observing and actually the effect that they're having on long COVID symptoms, on breathlessness in particular. And I think only by doing the much larger study are we going to then able to actually, one, unpick exactly what's going on within the lungs, where the abnormality is, and then work out actually whether or not it is what's causing the breathlessness, and then think about the kind of treatments that we could potentially give. So I think that the implications are that over time, if we have a better understanding of the factors that drive this symptom, we could think about better treatments, but we are at very, very early stages.